Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. Before we dive into today's story, we just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you all for watching. We truly appreciate your support. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It's totally free, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest stories. Now, with all that said, let's jump straight into the story. I never thought it would happen to me. After all, I was just Sarah, a 21-year-old college student trying to navigate the complexities of adulthood one lecture at a time. My life, I thought, was a series of mundane routines and academic struggles, far removed from the darker corners of human behavior. But sometimes, the shadows seep into the light of our ordinary lives, transforming the familiar into something sinister. It started innocuously enough. I was walking back from the late-night library, the kind of walk I took almost every weeknight. The campus was quiet, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the city. I had my headphones in, listening to an audiobook, when I noticed a figure in the distance. He was standing under a streetlight, his face obscured by the shadows cast by the lamp. I didn't think much of it at first. The campus was still bustling with late-night students and faculty. But as I drew closer, he didn't move. My instincts kicked in, and I quickened my pace, adjusting my grip on the pepper spray I always kept in my backpack. The next night, the same thing happened. The same figure, the same streetlight. I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence, a campus security guard perhaps, or a fellow student taking a late-night break. But deep down, I knew it was more. The third night, I decided to confront him. I approached the streetlight, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Can I help you with something?" He turned, and for a moment I could see his face. He was older, perhaps in his mid-40s, with a chiseled jaw and piercing blue eyes that seemed to cut through the darkness. "Oh, hi there," he said, his voice smooth and almost comforting. "I was just enjoying the night. It's so peaceful here." I didn't buy it. "Sure," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I guess it is, but it's also a bit creepy standing there, especially when you do it every night." He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "You're right, I suppose. I'll make sure to find a better spot for my night walks from now on." I nodded, still uneasy, and hurried back to my dorm. But from that night on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every step I took, every turn I made, I could sense eyes on me, following my every move. I tried to ignore it, to focus on my studies and my friends, but the unease persisted, a constant hum at the edge of my consciousness. Over the next few weeks, the incidents grew more frequent. I'd catch glimpses of him in the hallways, always at a distance, always watching. He never approached me, but his presence was like a dark cloud, hanging over everything I did. I mentioned it to my roommates, but they just laughed it off, telling me I was being paranoid. "It's a big campus." "Sarah," Emily said, shaking her head, "you probably just saw the same person a couple of times. Don't let it get to you." But it was getting to me. I started to avoid the places where I had seen him, changed my routine, and even began to walk with friends whenever possible. Despite my efforts, he was always there, always watching. One night, as I was leaving a late-night study session, I saw him again, this time closer than ever. He was leaning against a tree, his face illuminated by the light of his phone. I saw him look up, and our eyes met. He smiled, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak and groan of the old dormitory building filled me with dread. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Who was this man? Why was he following me? Was he dangerous? I decided I needed to do something, to take control of the situation before it spiraled out of control. The next day, I went to the campus security office. I explained everything to the guard on duty, a burly man named Frank who listened patiently but didn't seem particularly concerned. "We get a lot of complaints about strange people on campus," he said, shrugging. "Most of the time, it's just someone who's a bit too into their late-night walks. We'll keep an eye out, but I wouldn't worry too much." I left the office feeling frustrated and helpless. If the authorities weren't going to take this seriously, I would have to figure it out myself. I started to research him, to dig into the campus records and social media. It didn't take long to find him. His name was Michael Turner, a professor of philosophy who had a reputation for being eccentric. He lived off campus in a small house on the outskirts of town, and I found pictures of him on the university website and various academic forums. It was him, no doubt about it. The more I learned, the more uneasy I became. Michael had a history of controversial behavior, including allegations of inappropriate conduct with students. Nothing had ever been proven, but there were enough red flags to make me wonder. I decided to confront him again, this time in a more public setting. I waited until I saw him in the university's coffee shop, a place he seemed to frequent during the day. I took a deep breath and approached him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Professor Turner, right?" I asked, sitting down across from him. He looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Yes, and you are?" "Sarah, we've seen each other around campus a few times. I wanted to talk to you about something." He leaned back, his expression curious. "I'm listening. What's on your mind?" "I've noticed you around, and I'm starting to feel uncomfortable," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I don't like the feeling of being watched. Can you please stop following me?" He smiled, his eyes twinkling with what seemed like amusement. "Sarah, I assure you, I have no interest in following anyone. I simply enjoy the peace and quiet of the campus at night. If I've made you feel uncomfortable, I apologize. I'll make sure to be more mindful of my surroundings." I nodded, not entirely convinced, but at a loss for what else to say. As I left the coffee shop, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was lying. But what could I do? I had no proof, no concrete evidence that he was the one stalking me. The tension only grew from there. I started to feel like I was living in a nightmare, every day a new ordeal. I began to notice small things, signs that he was closer than I thought. A note slipped under my dorm room door, written in elegant handwriting. "You're not as alone as you think, Sarah." The words sent chills down my spine, and I reported it to campus security immediately. This time they took it more seriously, but they still couldn't find any concrete evidence tying Michael to the note. One weekend, I decided to take a break from the campus and visit my parents. I packed a small bag and boarded the bus, hoping that the change of scenery would give me some peace. But the moment I stepped into my childhood home, I saw it. A photo of me, taken from a distance, propped up on my parents' kitchen counter. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. How had he gotten it? How had he found out where my parents lived? My parents were out, so I had a few hours to try to piece together what was happening. I called campus security and they dispatched someone to my parents' house. I showed Officer the photo, but there was no other evidence who had taken the picture, no leads to follow. It seemed as if Michael had vanished into thin air. I returned to campus, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I couldn't focus on my studies, couldn't enjoy the simple pleasures of college life. Every shadow, every unfamiliar sound made me jump. I knew I had to do something, but I felt utterly helpless. Then one night, it all came to a head. I was walking back from a late-night class, my mind racing with everything that had happened. I turned a corner, and there he was, Michael Turner, standing in the shadows. My heart leapt into my throat and I froze, unsure of what to do. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and commanding, "I've been watching you, waiting for the right moment to speak to you." I took a step back, my hand instinctively reaching for the pepper spray. "Stay away from me," I said, my voice trembling. "I've reported you to the campus security. They're looking for you." He laughed, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "They won't find anything. I've been careful, but I want to talk to you, Sarah. I have something to show you." He pulled out a small envelope and held it out to me. I hesitated, then took it, my hands shaking. I opened it, and my eyes widened in shock. Inside was a series of photographs, taken from various angles and times, all of me. There were pictures of me walking to class, sitting in the library at my parents' house, even some of me coming out the shower. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He took another step closer, his eyes fixed on mine. "I want you to understand that you're not as alone as you think. I've been watching you, protecting you. The world can be a dangerous place, Sarah, and you need someone to look out for you." I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. "You're crazy," I said. "I don't need you or anyone else to protect me. Stay away from me, or I will call the police." His smile faded, and for a moment, I saw a flash of something dangerous in his eyes. But then he took a deep breath and stepped back. "Fine, Sarah. I'll give you your space. But remember, the night has many eyes, and I'm always watching." I turned and ran, not stopping until I reached the safety of my dorm room. I called the police, and this time they came quickly. They searched the campus, but Michael had vanished. I reported the incident to the university, and they assured me that they would take action. But the damage was done. The fear was now a part of me, a constant companion. In the weeks that followed, I did my best to move on. I changed my phone number, my email, and even considered transferring to another university. But every time I thought I was safe, I would catch a glimpse of him, a shadow in the corner of my eye, a whisper in the wind. The fear never truly left me, a dark cloud that hung over everything I did. One evening, as I was leaving the gym, I saw him again, this time in broad daylight. He was sitting on a bench, a newspaper in his hand, his eyes watching me intently. I felt a surge of rage, a determination to end this once and for all. I approached him, my heart pounding, and without thinking, I pulled out the pepper spray and sprayed it in his face. He stumbled back, his hands flying to his eyes. "Sarah, stop!" he shouted, but I didn't. I kept spraying until he was on the ground, gasping and writhing in pain. I turned and ran, not stopping until I was back in my dorm room, the door locked and barricaded. I called the police again, and this time they came quickly. They found Michael, still on the ground, and arrested him. He was charged with stalking, harassment, and possession of stolen property. The photos in the envelope had been enough to secure a warrant, and they found more evidence in his home, including a journal filled with detailed observations of my daily life. The trial was a blur, a series of faces and voices that I couldn't quite focus on. Michael's lawyer tried to paint him as a misunderstood academic, a man who had developed an unhealthy obsession but never intended to harm me. But the evidence was clear, and he was found guilty. He was sentenced to several years in prison, and I finally felt a sense of relief, a weight lifting from my shoulders. But the fear never fully left me. I still sometimes catch a glimpse of a shadow, a fleeting moment that makes me pause and look over my shoulder. The night has many eyes, and though Michael is gone, I know that there are others out there, watching, waiting. I've learned to be vigilant, to trust my instincts, and to never let my guard down completely. I'm not the same person I was before this ordeal. I've grown stronger, more resilient, but the darkness that crept into my life that night will always be a part of me. I've learned that sometimes the shadows are closer than we think, and the only way to survive is to face them head on, no matter how terrifying they may be.
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.